Hi everyone and welcome to the Navin Times Talk from the Heart. October is ADHD Awareness Month, and to speak to us about this topic, we have an expert in this field. With us in our studio today is Dr. Nandita D'Souza. Hello Dr. Nandita.
Hi Maria, it's so wonderful to be here. Thank you for this great opportunity.
Actually, we need to say thank you to you, because you won't believe it, doctor, we have been thinking about calling you since the last 2-3 years. But then something or the other happened and it was just not possible. But today we are so excited, that you're here with us in the studio. ADHD is something I think most of our viewers have at some point or the other heard about. But not everyone knows what ADHD is. Doctor, tell us a little bit about ADHD and also tell us a little bit about you, because you are a developmental pediatrician. Now we've heard of pediatricians, I'm sure everyone has, but developmental pediatrician is a title that is rather rare, isn't it? So
right.
If you could start with a little bit about you and then go on to ADHD, I think that would be great.
Okay, thanks Maria, and as I said, this is one of the most exciting Sundays I've spent in the last 6 months. It's lovely to be here, and especially to talk about ADHD. The full form is Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. It's quite a mouthful, but it's something really important that we all need to know about. So a little bit about my journey. I've trained as a pediatrician, and I always had a fascination for child development. Of course, I enjoyed treating sick children too, and I worked in Goa Medical College, where there's so many children who need help, right from very little premature babies, right up to adolescents. But during my career, I realized there's something I want to do which is different and which is to me more meaningful and which is necessary, and no one else is doing it. And that was child development and family guidance. So working with children with various developmental challenges, learning problems, emotional difficulties, as well as with their families. Because a child is, spends most of their lives with their families and in school. So for us, the team around the child was the families and the school. And a lot of our work, I work now at Setu. I'm the director of the Setu
Yes,
Center.
in fact, I was getting to it.
Yes, so, this is, so I suppose you could call me kind of a dropout pediatrician. But of course now developmental pediatrics is very, very well known, and there are lots of centers across India which are doing this work. And we realize that it's very essential because it deals with child mental health, child protection, things which are very important besides just the physical health of the child.
Right. So basically, you all are the pioneers in this field in Goa. Right. Especially because Setu has been here last 15 years, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Right? So what has the journey been like, Doctor?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been really very heartwarming and fulfilling working in Setu.
I can imagine.
We started off with a small team. Actually, 6 women started it. 3 of us were working, and 3 of us were trustees. And now it has grown to a team of 25 people with 5 trustees, and besides that, so many families, so many well-wishers, collaborators across Goa and even outside Goa. And our journey with ADHD also has been very interesting, because we have learned so much as we have gone ahead. Mm-hmm. Initially we were just doing a lot of diagnosis. That's also important, but that's not enough. So now we are working a lot with families and empowering families, giving them information, doing parenting workshops, as well as with schools, because teachers need to know what ADHD is in order to be sensitive towards the child, accept the child, and do their best by children. So teacher awareness, things that they can change in the classroom environment, creating public awareness, for example, today's program. All these are very essential in handling ADHD in the best possible manner.
Right. I mean, I agree with you when you're saying there has to be public awareness, because I'll give you my own example. I had this neighbor's son who was so boisterous, and often I used to say, I don't know why his parents don't give him a slap and make him sit down and make him, understand. Like, how indisciplined could he be? At that time, I wasn't aware of ADHD. I'm sure about 10, 15 years ago, ADHD was something that happened with someone else. It was something very alien. It was like, it's just indiscipline. That's all I can say about children who are, behaving the way they are behaving. So, yes, I mean, it's so good that you are. That is why I'm saying we are so pleased and, happy to have you in our studio, because I'm sure there are so many out there who have children and they're not sure, what it is. It's like,
right.
Am I not? And now with internet, everything is there, but to really understand it is something that is difficult, right?
Absolutely. So let's go back to the question you asked me, which I missed, which is tell us more about ADHD. What is ADHD? So ADHD actually, is very misunderstood. And it is a neurodevelopmental condition, so it's certainly not bad parenting. It's not children wanting to be naughty or draw attention to themselves. It's a neurodevelopmental condition where we see, to make it very simple, three main features. So the first one is inattention. Okay, so these children find it very difficult to focus, especially on boring things. They can focus for hours on a video game of their choice, no problem. But when it comes to the boring things of everyday life, remembering to tidy your room or, do your studies, those things are very tough for them. Okay, the second is restlessness. That is actually the symptom which most people catch up. Inattention very often goes under the radar. But restlessness, because it's kind of in your face, so children who can't sit in place, or even when they're sitting, they are fidgeting, rocking their chair, tapping their pencils. Okay, and third is impulsivity, doing things without thinking of the consequences. And this is what gets them into trouble, because when they're back answering or they're running out into the street and get into a dangerous situation, or they cannot wait for their turn, they're the ones who are blurting out answers in class or interrupting other people's conversations. Okay, so these are the three common symptoms. But again, all of us are restless sometimes, are inattentive at times.
In fact, I was going to say, my goodness, that means I'm suffering from ADHD. Really, I was actually thinking, am I suffering from ADHD? Oh my Lord, I'll have to, consult
please
you.
Take an appointment.
Yes, I know. I am going to. Yes.
Yeah, so as I was saying, everybody from time to time has some or maybe even all of these symptoms, but not everyone has ADHD.
Right.
Roughly around 10% of people do.
Okay.
So we have to make a diagnosis carefully. You can't just throw it around, oh, that child has ADHD or, hyper child. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yes.
So the way the diagnosis is made is also very detailed and very methodical. So there's no blood test for ADHD. There's no laboratory test. I can't do my blood attention level.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes,
Of course, kind of the PET scans and MRIs are done, but they're not diagnostic of ADHD, and they're only used in research settings, not in daily clinical practice. So the diagnosis is made through behavior, right? And to make sure that we are not over-diagnosing it, the behavior has to be assessed in two different situations. So one is generally home, and the second could be school, or for an adult could be workplace, or it could be the tuition teacher or the sports coach, right? Because we want to make sure that the behavior difficulties are in more than one place.
Right.
Right, because it could be environmental, it could be the way the parents are handling it, which is making this child inattentive or restless. But in school, the child is perfectly fine. So therefore, we need it from more than one place. That's one thing. Then there are a list of symptoms, and the child has to fulfill a certain level. So there are 9 for inattention and 9 for hyperactivity, impulsivity. So at least 6 a child should fulfill.
So 9 and 9 is 18.
18.
So 6 out of those
about
18.
12, yes, at least. Okay,
makes a child. You can categorize it and say, the child has ADHD.
Yes. No, we still can't say it.
Oh.
The third thing, it has to affect functioning. And we look at functioning in the home, in the school, among peers or friendships, and in society. So is the level of these symptoms to such an extent that this child's functioning is being affected? So they're getting into serious trouble at home, they have academic difficulties in school, they don't have friends, they're being isolated, or like the parents can't go to a restaurant because this child will just not sit through a meal. Okay,
right.
So that's one level. I mean, all these things need to be done. Then of course we have to rule out other conditions which can mimic ADHD.
Okay.
So sometimes, if the child is going through an emotional crisis, a child who's anxious or who's depressed will also be inattentive. So
Yes.
you have to kind of do a mental health assessment, right? And then we also look for hypothyroidism, hearing deficits.
You said hypothyroidism?
Hypothyroidism, yes, because thyroid
in
hormone.
children?
Yes, we can get, even in babies, we can get hypothyroidism.
Is it? I always thought this was, a condition that adults.
Well, the
have to go
thyroid
through.
Hormone is needed from
Right,
birth
right.
onwards. Yeah. So
Okay.
So yes. So all these assessments need to be done. So it takes time. It takes a lot of patience. It takes talking to, as I said, parents, teachers, and so on. So what we do at Setu is, we use checklists, which we ask parents to go take to the school, because, we can't expect teachers to come to us, and we don't have the staff capacity to go into the school. And then if it's needed, we can talk over the phone with the teacher. So, we can't do it in an hour even, this diagnosis. So it takes time. But once we have satisfied ourselves that, yes, this child has the symptoms, only then we would
Right.
say that this child has ADHD.
Right. Now, what I wanted to also ask is, how long would the process of, diagnosing, if it really is an ascertaining, okay, is this really ADHD? How long would that take?
Yeah, so I can't give a time, because it depends on, people are busy, right? So
Okay.
it depends on how fast we get the information back. So sometimes it takes a little time from school because teachers are busy. So
True.
that's why we have checklists, so the teacher doesn't have to sit and write a long report. Sometimes we find this that, we can see that the child has the symptoms even in our presence. The parents have complained about it, but the teacher's worried. She doesn't want to write anything that will get her into trouble. So though she's been complaining a lot, when the checklist comes back to us, everything is absolutely fine. And they even scold the parents, why did you, take your child for assessment? Your child is fine. The parents, but you've been complaining that
Correct.
he's not sitting in place, not finishing his homework, and, blurting out answers in class.
And disturbing everyone in the class.
Exactly.
Yes.
So then we get on the phone if the number is there and talk to the teacher and explain.
Okay.
So, so, I mean, that takes time, because we want to make sure that we get everybody on board. Once we made the diagnosis, then the process starts of educating people. That is key to the child's well-being. Educating the child, making him or her understand there's nothing wrong with him or her. It's just the way his brain or her brain is processing information. And the way we talk about the dopamine and the neurotransmitter in the brain, okay, which is required to pay attention, and how dopamine is low, and therefore we need to increase the levels of dopamine, and so on. So for me, and for all of us who work at Setu, it's a very energizing and fascinating process, because it's so interesting to understand ADHD, because the way the brain functions, okay, all of us need to know that. Not only people with ADHD. In ADHD, yes, the main problem is in the frontal lobe, okay, where the levels of dopamine are low. But the frontal lobe takes 25 years to fully develop, even in neurotypical people.
Okay.
That's why you find teenagers sometimes make really impulsive decisions and do risky things, and you wonder, what on earth were they thinking? Actually, they weren't, because their frontal lobes are still not fully developed.
Yes. So they are still developing, and
Exactly.
they're still in that.
So whether you have ADHD or not, everyone should learn about brain development, because then they can understand themselves and the people around them, whether it's their children or their colleagues or friends and other family members.
But doctor, that's a Herculean task, understanding the brain. I think the scientists are still trying to figure out.
Yeah, but it's pretty
Basically, you're saying the
easy to
basics.
understand. Yes, because can I try and explain it?
Yes.
Okay, so
as long as it's not too technical.
No, I'll try not to.
Or it's
make
going to
it
go
technical.
above my head. And
okay, you stop me if you find.
it'll confirm I have ADHD, because I'm going to just,
Yes, you can interrupt and tell me to keep
Okay.
quiet. So I was talking about the frontal lobe.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the part behind our forehead. So the frontal lobe is the CEO of our brain.
Okay.
The Chief Executive Officer.
Right.
So just like a CEO in the office will make the decisions, problem solve, analyze. That's what our frontal lobe does. It's responsible for organization and what we call executive functions.
Okay.
Now, to put it very simply, a good way to remember what is this executive functions is to think of the word stop. S-T-O-P.
All right.
Okay, so there are 4 major types of executive functions. So S is for stop. So it's impulse control. My frontal lobe stops me from doing something that I should not be doing.
Right.
2 is think. If there's a problem, my frontal lobe says, okay, hold on. Think. What should I do? Can I do this or this or this? So that's what we call cognitive flexibility. Being able to choose different options without getting frustrated. So that's what our frontal
So
lobe
basically
does.
the ability to choose and making the right decision.
Analyze,
Yes.
reason. Okay, so that's think. O is organization. Organization in time and organization in space. So for example, remembering that I have to come here this morning, okay, not being late. Or remembering I have a dental appointment, I don't know, 2 weeks from now.
Right.
And organization of space, making sure everything has a place, okay, and a place for everything, right? So I know I've left my pen on the table, otherwise I'm wasting a lot of time looking for my keys and so on. So that is frontal lobe. So STO, organization. P is performance. And that's what we call working memory. The memory I use as I'm working on something. So if I'm reading a book, as I'm reading, by the time I reach the last sentence, I still remember what
The first
I
sentence,
started
yes.
off with.
Right.
Because I have to keep it in mind. If not, I have to go back again and start. So that can get exhausting for a child with ADHD. Right? I'm, doing my assignment. Someone calls me, I need to attend to something. I remember that my assignment was incomplete. I get back to it.
But you don't know what you started with.
Right. So that's what happens, that they get distracted by the next stimulus that comes along, forgetting that they started off on something.
Right.
Right? So these are the executive functions that the frontal lobe is responsible for. And we all use this right through life. And it takes 25 years to get good at it, because that's how long it takes for the frontal lobe to get fully myelinated.
Okay.
Right? But with children with ADHD, this maturation is delayed even further. So it's like a double whammy, because the children by themselves, their frontal lobes are not mature, and when they have ADHD,
It gets worse.
Yes, it gets worse. So you'll see all the difficulties that they have of inattention, forgetfulness, not following instructions. They'll be looking at you and saying yes, 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 and
But
the
they
minds
don't
are
understand
somewhere else.
anything.
Yes. So that's what gets them into trouble.
Right.
Poor impulse control. So as they grow older, it goes into risk-taking behaviors. When they become adolescents, so you will find, drug abuse, risky behaviors, driving without a helmet, driving at high speeds, though you know that there's a limit on that, dares. I mean, adolescents with ADHD are the ones who take up all the dares that their peers throw at them, because they don't judge that this can get me into trouble. It is said the brain of the child with ADHD lives in the here and now, lives in the land of fun. So anything that's fun, they're ready to do it. And they're very wacky, funny people, because they have great sense of humor, they're very affectionate, they're always ready to do things which are interesting to them, and sometimes really like out of the way, unusual things. So it's not all bad news, but they do struggle. So that's where we need to help people with ADHD.
Okay. We are waiting for your questions as well, viewers. So you have any questions, please send it to them, and we'll take it from there. Doctor, while we are getting some more comments, I would like to ask my next question, and that is, what causes ADHD? In fact, as I said, there was who I'd spoken about earlier, the child, and I remember the mother saying, I don't know what I must have done in my earlier life, that I have to, put up with this, and my child is like this. They think it's a curse.
Right.
various things. I mean, you know, and I think in a way it was natural for parents to think, okay, because we didn't know then, we didn't know better.
Yes.
So for us it was, if something is wrong with our child, it reflects on us. It is I who have done something wrong. So, like, what causes it?
Right. I think you brought up a very important point, which is the blame game. Because it is behavior, right? Parents often get blamed, you know, and it's not the parents who have caused the ADHD in their child. Okay, we still don't know exactly what causes ADHD, but there are several factors which in which ADHD you see more commonly. So as I said, it's brain development, right? There is a strong genetic component. In fact, the heritability of ADHD is around 80%. So very often we find that one parent also has it.
Okay.
Yeah. As well as different insults to the brain. So, for example, if a baby, you know, didn't cry at birth, or a baby who's been extremely premature, okay, drug addiction in the mother during her pregnancy, okay. So these are some of the, but most often we don't find any cause, right? So, but as I said, if we see that there's one person in the family with ADHD, it's good to ask about other family members. And the reason for this is, especially when it's a child and a parent. When a child has ADHD and the parent also has ADHD, it's going to be very tough, because to parent a child with ADHD, you have to be the frontal lobe for that child.
And you have to have the ability,
exactly.
the skills.
So you have to be even more structured, organized, calm, be able to control your impulses. And if you're already struggling with that, you and your child are just going to butt heads more and more. You know, so one good way in which to find out is to ask about school completion. So whether the parents were able to complete school and college, because many people with ADHD find it hard to complete their education, because it is the studying and, you know, sitting in one place, listening to lectures, exactly, which is very tough for them.
Absolutely.
They're often very good with their hands. So there'll be designers and creative people,
right,
okay, or stand-up comedians, you know. But when it comes to academics, it's tough. Okay, I mean, of course, there are many academics who also have ADHD, and in fact, a lot of the ADHD information out there is, you know, there are pediatricians, psychiatrists who've kind of, you know, self-aware and who've spoken a lot about ADHD and made it their life mission to help
spread awareness,
yes,
of,
and
of this
to help
topic.
people with ADHD.
Yes, I can imagine.
But yes, so the thing is that it's important for you know, if we diagnose it early, not because we want to put like a label on the child's head and say, okay, we can't do anything with you, not at all, but to understand how best we can help this
the child,
as well as train the parents, because how the child is handled, it's going to make a big difference.
Absolutely.
You know, and also the teachers, because again, people with ADHD need a lot of compassion, they need acceptance, they need structure. Okay, so if I have ADHD and I'm all over the place and I've lost my temper and said something rude, and you are my teacher, you have to understand that, yes, okay, it's not like I don't need discipline, yes I do, but not to take it personally, or not to judge the parents, see they haven't brought up their child properly.
Well.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with bad karma or anything like that.
Right.
And it's basically dopamine in the brain. I mean, you wouldn't blame the parents if their child had diabetes, right?
Right.
So I'd like to compare these two, because in diabetes, a lack of insulin, it's not a moral failure.
Absolutely.
The same with ADHD, it's lack of dopamine. It's not because the parents don't care or the parents are pampering the child, which is often what the public thinks. And that really affects parents so badly, because parents are trying their best.
The best.
You know,
of course, and parents also think that, you know, my children are an embodiment of me, my husband, my family values and stuff like that. So if your child is misbehaving, obviously you want to put your hands up and say, what have I done?
Wrong.
What have I done? Doctor, we come to, you know, Sharmila Banerjee's question, where she says, are ADHD and ADD the same? And if not, in what way? Sharmila, your question has been asked, so the answer, doctor?
Well, yes, they're the same. I mean, before we used to call it ADD, that's attention deficit disorder.
Right.
But now we say ADHD. Actually, when we say ADHD, there are three types. There's the purely inattentive type. Okay, then there's the hyperactive impulsive type, and then there's the combined type, where you have inattention with hyperactivity, impulsivity. But yeah, I mean, ADHD and ADD mean the same.
Yes. Okay. Sumer Gwalani asks, and how would you help break the hyperfocus loop when it's a thought which is more detrimental to continue the thought? I am so confused, Sumer, but you're very lucky doctors here to
Thank you for asking that question, and I love that word, hyperfocus. Yes, so people with ADHD tend to hyperfocus. So it's not a lack of attention, it's a selective attention difficulty. So on what they love, they can hyperfocus. So for example, a video game, a screen is like cocaine to some ADHD individuals, right? Now, but you still have to brush your teeth, you still have to do your homework, and so that's very tough. So how do you break it? One, of course, is being self-aware. Okay, and the parents, understanding that you can't just be yelling at your child and threatening to throw the phone away, or that's not going to work. So it's like Velcro. Once you've hyper-focused, you're stuck. So you have to peel it off gently. Not say, I'm taking the phone away right now, give it to me.
I think that's the key word, the gently.
Yes. Otherwise, it's like throwing a bucket of ice water on the child. Okay?
Right.
Their brains have to adjust that, okay, now in 5 minutes or in 10 minutes, the phone is going to be taken, or the screen is going to be taken away from me, because on my written timetable, so it's not my parent just saying something out of the blue. Right. On my written timetable, it is written that at whatever, 10:15 is my time for homework. Okay. So it's creating that structure and gradually giving warning. So you set the timer for your child, or if I'm hyper-focused and I need to go brush my teeth, I set the timer for myself that in 10 minutes, I'm going to end this. So, then I don't have to remember. My organization is external.
But that's I think for a little older children. For younger children, they don't know, they don't understand what's going on with them. For them to basically say, okay, I have a problem, they can't even fathom that, actually.
So we don't talk in terms of problem, and even young children, we explain ADHD to them. I'll tell you how. So we say that, we tell them about their brains, which are like racer cars. Okay, so your brain is very smart, thinks of all kinds of things very fast. Okay, what happens is that this racer car brain of yours has cycle brakes. Now you tell me, if you have this very fast and powerful car engine and you have the brakes of a cycle, what's going to happen? So they say it's going to go off the road. Yes. So that's what happens. Okay. So that's what gets you into trouble. So using structure is very helpful to break the hyperfocus, and if it's a parent doing it for their child, giving them adequate warning so that they can adjust to it. Okay. Because for them, when they play a video game for 3 hours, it seems like 3 minutes.
Absolutely.
But when they have to tidy the room, something that will take 10 minutes feels like 10 hours. So it's just that perspective which the brain, which lacks executive function, takes.
And you also mentioned it is there, on your agenda. That basically.
Yes, you have to make organization external. Your working memory has to be external. So people with ADHD function very well with written stuff. Setting reminders for themselves,
and parents have to help with that. Okay, let's sort of make a timetable.
Yes.
That we do this.
Yes. With the child, together with the child.
Yes.
Because
can we do this? Can I, speaking to my child? So I ask my child, isn't it?
Yes. And write it down and keep it somewhere where it can be seen. And give adequate warning. Just because your child has said, yes, from 10 to 11 I'll do whatever.
That doesn't mean that they will stick to it.
That means you have to remind them, but not by nagging and telling them 100 times before, but again, putting a post-it. And the thing is to reward it. Again, for people with ADHD, they need immediate rewards. If I study hard this month, I'll get good marks in my exam. It doesn't work for them. If I study hard for half an hour, what will I get? So you'll get 15 minutes extra on your video game, or we'll order food from out, or whatever it is. So I always tell parents, make a list of daily rewards which are rewarding to your child, make a list of weekly rewards and a list of monthly rewards. Obviously you can't order food from out every day, I hope not. You're not eating outside food, but things that you can give every day to your child.
Right.
You know, and the child can select from that
Okay.
list.
Doctor, we'll go to another question. Govind Age says, Doctor, what is the matter of adults? Do they suffer from ADHD or only children go through? Govind, doctor had spoken about this earlier, where she said, you know, ADHD, even adults suffer from it, and
right, and quite a high percentage of adults, you know, so
yes.
in about 50% of children with ADHD, they'll go on to become adults with ADHD. However, now the frontal lobe is better developing. Yes. But as I said, a lot of parents self-diagnose when their children are diagnosed. Like, you know, we'll have parents say, but I'm exactly like this. I forget things, or the wife will say, my husband is just like this. You know, so of course we shouldn't kind of just pass off that diagnosis without going through a full assessment. But you know, for people who are wondering whether they have ADHD, there are a lot of self-report scales on the internet. Okay, there's an adult self-report scale, so they can do that, and then if they fulfill
but that can be very misleading. I mean,
no,
like
they have to consult a doctor.
Yes,
of course,
they need to
go. Yeah, but as a
because
first,
you know, self-assessment, I don't know. I always feel that it's best to leave that to the experts.
So this is a standardized test. It's adult self-reports.
Okay. There was an earlier question, you know, which I can't see right now, but it was asking about what happens to children who have not been diagnosed and now they have become adults and they're still suffering from ADHD. What is the way forward? I don't know who had asked that question. It was a little earlier, but yes.
Again, it's an important question. So as I said, about 50% of children with ADHD will go on to become adults with ADHD. And why we are worried? Because of the poor impulse control, these children, as they grow older, can get into trouble. Okay. Plus, because of this lack of focus, they have chronic academic underachievement. These kids are so smart sometimes, and their parents and teachers want, like, if you only
paid attention,
revised more, completed your homework, practiced regularly, you would do so well. This is the constant refrain that we hear. Okay, and they're not doing it on purpose. The children are trying their best. So what are we worried about? Several things. One is we have what is called comorbidity. So ADHD walks hand in hand with many other conditions. In fact, 80% of children with ADHD will have another diagnosis. Anxiety 30%, depression 30%. Okay, specific learning disability, okay, again about 25%. So it walks hand in hand with other things. So that's why it's important to pick it up early. Second, because of poor impulse control, for example, girl teenagers have 1,000% higher risk of a teenage pregnancy. Impulsive behavior. Okay?
Right.
Accidents. Okay, drug abuse, substance abuse, whether it's alcohol or marijuana, now that's become very common because it's being legalized all over the world.
Right.
You know, so these are the risks which we are worried about, which is why it's important to treat it early. And we may need to treat, like if the child also has anxiety, treat that along with the ADHD.
Okay.
But all these conditions are treatable and there's help available for it. And when I say treatable, I don't only mean medication, because parents are often very worried. We want the frontal lobe to work in optimum conditions. So I've mentioned all the behavior strategies, right? Timetables, lists, timers, immediate rewards.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing is a high protein diet. That also helps dopamine levels to go up. Exercise. Exercise is an excellent way to keep your dopamine levels high. And many children with ADHD are because they're very physical, they like exercise. I remember I had a young client once. He used to do the dopamine dance. So before his homework, turn on the music and 5 minutes he'll be jumping all around, and he called it the dopamine dance because that brought his dopamine levels up. Sleep. You need adequate sleep for your dopamine levels to be high. So all of us notice it. If we've had a bad night's sleep, we can't focus the next day. That's because our dopamine is depleted. So at least 8 hours sleep for the child to, have good executive functioning. So we always try behavior therapy, environmental modifications first, but there are some children who are very impulsive, and they're getting into trouble all the time. I mean, schools are expelling them. Ideally, we should not wait for a crisis to start treatment, right? But in real life, that's what happens.
So you all give medication as well?
Yes, we do give medication, and in fact 70 to 80% of people will respond very well to the first line medication. There are two types. One is amphetamines, which are banned in India. So we have methylphenidate, and as I said, 70 to 80% will respond really well. Again, we start medicines in children at a very low dose, and we go slow. Why? Because we don't want to over medicate. We don't want to cause side effects. What are the major side effects? Appetite loss, which for Indian parents is a big disaster, okay,
we love to feed our children.
Exactly. So, many parents worry about that, but actually research has shown that it doesn't, it does affect appetite, but not to the extent that the child will lose a lot of weight. And up to 5 kilos of weight is fine.
It's fine.
Okay. But because the medications last just for the short acting one, maybe about 3 to 4 hours, once the effect wears off, then they'll eat
back again,
enough for the full day. That's why the growth doesn't get affected. So there are many ways to treat the condition. But first is pinpointing, yes, this is what it is. Educating everybody around. Starting the behavior therapy, and it's not easy because it's constant. It's like dusting. Just because you've dusted your house today, that
doesn't mean you don't have to do it tomorrow.
Yes, and it can be exhausting for parents, because it's a daily 24/7 kind of job, but the rewards are great in the end. Yeah, so.
Okay. Can we take another question? Namrata Ambastha says, as an occupational therapist, what can we do for ADHD and for better improvement? So,
right. So again, thank you to Namrata for asking that question. So occupational therapists, or OTs as we call them, have a big role to play because one of the deficits in ADHD is what we call self-regulation. Okay, and OTs are very concerned about self-regulation. Self-regulation comes from self-awareness. OTs are responsible for activities of daily living. Now, what are the activities of daily living of a, 8-year-old child? So one of the important activities is schooling. So many of these children find handwriting extremely difficult. Handwriting needs excellent working memory. Okay, the P of the stop. So because I have to remember what I have to write about, I have to organize my thoughts in a logical fashion, I have to remember punctuation, I have to remember spellings of the words, I have to remember to keep space between the words, so much to deal with. Oh God, it's exhausting, I'm not going to write. So many children with ADHD avoid writing, they hate writing. They say, I'll tell you.
Orally,
yeah, but I don't want to write. Or they'll write very untidily or, make a lot of mistakes. As I said, some of them may have a learning disability that will add to their difficulties. So an occupational therapist helps with handwriting because it's fine motor, it's body posture, it's muscle tone. All this comes under the umbrella of what occupational therapist
It is vast, isn't it?
It's
the
vast,
treatment
yes. But
OT's
session with an OT is great fun. Because all the interesting things in life they have in their therapy room, whether it's the bouncing balls and the swings and chewy tubes and things you can stretch, therapy. If you need to go to an OT, go right away because it's great fun.
Even for adults?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm going to check now which is the closest OT. Let us take fun
therapist.
let us take another Anjali Barreto Nunes. What about adults who have been identified late? How can we help them? Doctors already answered that, how can we help them? So,
yeah, they need to meet a person who's trained to handle ADHD because as I said, even doctors sometimes are not very much aware about ADHD. They know it, but they haven't studied it in detail. Because it's often missed. But now with better awareness, we are seeing adults who are coming forward and wondering whether they have ADHD and then getting help for it.
Right.
So for them, it would be, of course, the medication, okay, as well as, some of them have a history of losing jobs, often just walking out of jobs. So there's both unemployment and underemployment. Then relationships, failed relationships, because they're so impulsive, so sometimes failed marriages. So they will need a lot of emotional counseling also if they've gone through experiences like this, which kind of affect their self-esteem and make them feel quite hopeless. And of course, psychiatric help is very essential if they need it.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what about, since the time I was a child, I had ADHD. I've been diagnosed, I've been treated. Can it go away? I mean, does it ever go away, or do I have to live with it for the rest of my life? What is it?
Right. So, actually, when I think of myself, I'm quite sure as a child, if I was living now as a child, I would have been diagnosed with ADHD.
Okay.
Because looking back, I remember I was a very impulsive child. I've done some crazy things, both when I was a child as well as in my
You don't look it though.
I know, I look like this very sedate old lady,
Yeah,
right?
not old lady, but like someone who I'll come to for advice, who's going to give me the
Yeah.
best advice.
There's hope.
Yes, there is hope.
No,
Okay.
but
Yes.
seriously, so I think that it's important to kind of make sure that the person gets the help that they need. Okay, so first is diagnosis. Now, like I'm just taking my own example. I'm a highly organized person. That is my scaffold. I'll always have a piece of paper and a pen with me. I write everything down. I set reminders for myself, the phone, Evernote. Like I'm constantly using stuff to help me to remember, because I forget easily. Okay. The other thing is I get excited by every idea that comes in my path. So I'm sure it's quite frustrating for my colleagues at work, because any idea, let's do it, let's do
Right.
it, not realizing that each thing to do has another million things in its wake. Okay, so in my enthusiasm, I jump at everything, but I don't complete them sometimes. Fortunately, I have a very supportive team who either tells me, excuse me, you're going, running, like a runaway horse, stop it, we can't handle all this, okay, or they kind of remind me that, you said you would do this, so you need to complete it. So, so what I'm saying is we do struggle with organization, remembering, right through life if you've had ADHD. But the thing is the support system, self-awareness, self-regulation. So if a person is self-aware, they know, okay, hang on, I'm really feeling tired right now, let me take a brain break. Now, what is a brain break? It's different. For me, it may be that I put on my headphones and listen to some music. For someone else, it may be I'll just go for a quick jog, or take a skipping rope and jump 100 times. For someone, it may be let me just go and make a nice salad. Okay, so it's different. But you need a break from that tiring work that you've been doing in order to raise your dopamine levels again. But if I'm not self-aware, I'll continue working, I'll start making a lot of mistakes, get very frustrated with myself, shout at my spouse.
And basically mess up everything.
Exactly.
Yes.
Another thing with people with ADHD is emotional impulsivity. So especially when they're toddlers, this is one sign that we see early. Extremes.
Okay.
They are never happy, they're ecstatic. They're never sad, they're devastated, they're never angry, they're furious. So it's extremes of emotions. And you know how difficult that can be, right? It's like the end of the world if you didn't get your ice cream that day because you have a cold. So learning to deal with our emotions is again something which is very important. And for people with ADHD, this untreated, undiagnosed, very often this is something that really affects their functioning and their relationships and their jobs and their self-esteem. Like it's such a multi-faceted condition. It goes into all aspects of our life.
Oh yes.
So if it's treated and we are self-aware and we can self-regulate, maybe we have to take medication, or maybe we have to make sure that every day for 1 hour we do that exercise, or I have to do my meditation. Then I'm learning how to self-regulate, how to keep my executive functions at optimum level, and how to live life happily.
And stay sane and function effectively.
Sane and safe, yes, absolutely.
Isn't it? Now, there is Alicia Narvekar. I think Alicia is a teacher. Maybe I'm wrong, Alicia, forgive me. But she says, how can preschool teachers help students with ADHD in the classroom setup.
Yes. So
My goodness, Alicia, you must be must be having a hands full. I wouldn't want to be
thanks,
in that
Alicia,
place.
for that
Yes.
question. Yes, and preschoolers are so important in our lives. So yes, I've not spoken much about what can be done in school. So there's a lot that teachers can do. Okay, so the first thing is, of course, understand ADHD. Understand it's not the child doing it on purpose. Be prepared for the long haul. As I said, children who exercise, it raises their dopamine levels. So providing frequent breaks, okay, exercise breaks. This is good for all preschool children, you know. So what we say is actually for young children, 10 plus 2. 10 minutes work, 2 minutes break. But you have to have enough of ideas of what this child could do in 2 minutes.
Those 2 minutes.
Ask the child also. So you have a list so your child can choose for the break, and you set it on the timer, so you know that 2 minutes is not going to become 2 hours.
Right.
Okay. Then making sure that we kind of, when we are giving instructions, because they may be looking at us, as I said, but their minds are somewhere
Mind
else.
is somewhere else,
Yeah, but we
absolutely.
get their attention. Give one instruction at a time. Preferably use touch, so you know
Yes,
the child is
yes.
focused, and say, now tell me what I said. So you know that the child has heard. Okay, rewards, making sure that the child gets rewarded for all the effort, not only achievement but effort. Reward effort, not only achievement. Because even effort is a step in the right direction. So a child has written something, okay, there may be some spelling mistakes. You can say check your work, okay, but then the child has taken that
Effort,
time
made that
to-
effort.
Yes. So
Absolutely.
it could be even a verbal reward, you know, but
Right.
you describe, wow, like you've written 3 sentences, or you know, I can see you remember to put the date in the margin.
Mm-hmm.
Good job. So you describe what the child has done and reward the child. You know,
Right.
and then emotional. That's important because, as I said, right from preschoolers we see these extreme emotions. So to you know, they show warning signs sometimes. So for the teacher to understand, okay, now this child needs a break, needs some calming down, okay, rather than let it go on till it erupts into a big full-blown temper tantrum.
Right.
And what we do with emotions is recognize the child's feelings. How do we do that? By giving it a name and a reason. So you are feeling upset because your friend took the
Whatever.
toy truck away from you.
Right.
Okay, so I'm giving the name upset because children don't have that vocabulary, so they show it in their behavior. They will be screaming or rolling or going and hitting the other child. So we can say hands are not for hitting, you're upset because you wanted that toy. Okay, and then kind of, you know, maybe having a card. So now if the card is with you, it's your turn to play, set the timer, in 2 minutes the card will come to me, my turn to play. We have to make it very concrete and visual, because when I say something, where are my words? They're gone. So it's
Yeah, I
very
can't seem to. I don't remember. You know what happened a minute ago.
Exactly, but when it's
Yes.
written down, when I can see the card with the toy truck drawn on it, I know the one who has that picture card is the one who gets the toy. So I'm willing to wait. It's like how we go to the bank, used to get those tokens first.
Tokens.
We would hold that for 2 hours, but we knew, okay, and we could see,
That's
okay,
my
this number
number,
52, I'm
yes.
85. So it just helps you to wait. Otherwise, you go on again and again and ask that person, when is my turn coming? When is my turn coming?
Right.
So giving it a structure, making it visual is very important to handle children, young children, whether they're preschoolers or older children with ADHD.
Okay, so Alicia, I think you know, doctor has answered quite in detail actually. So we are now going to go to the next question, which is, it's Samantha. Please forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. It's Samantha Buragoen. Okay, to reduce hyperactivity and inattention, what activities should be given?
Right. So definitely physical activities, but let the child decide, because each child has what they, I mean, we need to take their preferences into account. So, you know, some child may be able to focus better if they have a squeezy ball, or what we call fidget toys. Now, fidget toys, you can pay quite a bit of money and get them online. There's like spinners and stuff, but you can create your own, like take, you know, a bunch of rubber bands, tie them together, and it's just that something that I play with, I can focus better.
Okay.
Okay, but exercise is important, right? Because exercise raises your dopamine level. And for inattention, breaks, okay, making it interesting for the child. For example, sometimes children want to study outdoors, or they want to, you know, I remember this child with ADHD, I knew him as a personal friend. He was watching television. He had a cricket bat in his hand and he had his book in his other hand. And while watching television, he was with his bat hitting the ball against the wall and studying at the same time. You know, for someone who couldn't understand, said, what on earth are you doing?
Exactly.
But he was focusing, and that was the best way for him to study. So it doesn't matter as long as the job is done. So we have to talk to people and ask them what helps you. And what helps you may be quite different from what helps me.
Absolutely.
But to incorporate our preferences into whatever approach or therapy we are planning for them. Yeah.
Okay. You know, I think there is there a connection? Shanessa Barreto says, is there a connection between undiagnosed ADHD among adults and self-esteem, and what needs to be done?
Right. Your viewers are really putting in very interesting questions. So yes, self-esteem and ADHD, as I said earlier, because of that very often the track record of, you know,
not
poor
listening,
friendships,
horrible
no job,
behavior,
you know, academic underachievement,
yes.
a lot of frustration. They're trying their best, but no one understands them. No one is giving them opportunities. Everyone is pointing out their failures and so on. So definitely it affects self-esteem. Basically, self-esteem is, to put simply, is three things: believing you are lovable, believing you are capable, and believing you are unique. Okay. Now, if people are saying, get out of my face, I don't want to have anything to do with you, obviously you're not going to believe you're lovable. If people say, you know, you goof up every time, there's no use giving you any work, you're always, yes, that you're not going to believe you're capable. Right? So people who've suffered these kind of adverse events right from their childhood, they need a lot of building up of their self-esteem, you know. But at least in Setu, we believe that everyone has strengths. That is key. And we need to focus on that. Everyone is doing something right. What is that they're doing right? What are the things they enjoy? What are the things they're good at? That's where we need to start.
You need to identify that.
Yes. And if we can develop that into a career, that's
nothing
great.
like it.
So you may have a child with ADHD who's running all the time. Can they become an athlete? Or you may have a child with ADHD who loves to fish. Can that become a career? Or you have a child with ADHD who's very creative and, you know, loves to talk a lot and is always good with repartee. Can they become a stand-up comedian or a MC at for weddings? I don't know. But yes, these are things that need to be developed. So when they start experiencing success and we point out what they have done in their past, even that, you know, was kind of positive and which people maybe made a difference to other people's lives, we can build their self-esteem. So it's very, very important to just your whole outlook on life and your resilience, as well as how you take on new challenges and approach life in general.
Right. You know, we have spoken so much about teachers, the important role that teachers play. I mean, I always look up to teachers because truly they are molding lives, you know. And I just wonder, you know, and the more I'm speaking with you, the more I realize that teachers need to be trained.
Absolutely.
You know, they need to be trained so that they can identify and say, you know, this child, there is something that we need to look into. And I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I just think that teachers should have some sort of training to handle, because a classroom today, before we used to have 20 and 30 and 40. Today there's 50 and 55 students in a class. And it's not easy. So would you recommend that, you know, our school teachers, even college teachers for that matter, are trained? Because I've come across sometimes so many children. I remember once I even said to this child, he just wouldn't sit, and I'm like, do you have ants in your pants? Can't you just sit down? Like, what? I wanted to pull my hair and pull his hair out, truly. But you know, now when you think back about it, maybe, just maybe, this child is having the problem.
So certainly, Maria, I mean, training is key, because with training comes information. Information is power, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
Better understanding, and then strategies which you can use. You no longer take it personally that this child is doing this just to irritate me. For teachers, you've told them 100 times, still they're doing the same thing. I mean, what other explanation could there be? You're just doing it to
irritate me, obviously.
Once you start taking other people's misbehavior personally, you're not going to be able to handle it effectively.
But I think that happens generally in life as well.
Yes, even with parents, it happens,
yes.
right? But it's not, that person is trying their best. We have to understand that, okay? So there's a lot that teachers can do. In the training, like what we do at Setu is giving them information about ADHD, and then, as I mentioned earlier, making sure that they have structure in the classroom, and this structure will help all children, not only the child with ADHD. Giving them breaks. For example, if some children prefer to stand, give them a desk which is in the corner, which they can stand and learn. You know? Now you get those, like a water mattress, you get little cushions in which you fill water, so they're a little wobbly. Okay. Sometimes just sitting on a cushion like that will help them to focus. Giving them a fidget toy, decreasing their writing load. Let them answer orally, it doesn't really matter. So these are the adjustments and concessions which we can make in order to help the child experience success. Rather than doing 10 sums, okay, out of which 7 are wrong, if you give them 3 sums which they do correctly, okay, isn't that better? The remaining 7 which they got wrong was just because they were fed up and they couldn't care less. They just want to get it over with and give it back to the teacher, right? Because what is it? Recess is coming, I have to go and play. I'm going to get low marks in my exam. That's okay. We'll see that.
That's
but
fine.
You know what? I can hear the boys playing football already,
and I want to go there.
Yes. So these are some of the things that the teachers can do to help. Yes.
But it's not going to be easy.
Well, I think initially nothing is easy, but once we practice it, we see the response, the positive response, and teachers are key in children's lives.
Absolutely.
All of us will remember those teachers who were our mentors, and a word from them, the way they cared, it just transformed our lives, and many years later we still feel the power of their their personalities and their approach to us.
Of course.
Okay, and teachers are important even more so, because very often parents are stressed out and they don't have that kind of time with the child. So though the children are living at home, the parents are out of work, yes. So and by the time they come home, they're only busy with homework, all the, what would I say, stressful things that need to be done, right?
Okay.
So the teacher then becomes like an additional resource in the child's life.
Okay, we just have about 3 minutes, and I'm going to very quickly go through some of the questions. Sai Mahambre says, how can we convince people to get themselves assessed if they, if they feel, or if we feel that they have ADHD? Oh my goodness.
That's a tricky one.
I have so many people I know.
Maria is going to go out now and tell the whole world they have ADHD.
Say, I think you, please, you're pissing me off, so you need to go and, oh goodness. I love this question, Sai, but yes, doctor, tell us more.
Yeah, so that's a sensitive one,
Yes.
I think it's important to have a good relationship, a basic good relationship with this person in whom you suspect that maybe they have ADHD. Because you can't just go and tell anybody, go and check something's wrong with you. Right?
I know.
So the thing is to talk about what they find difficult. So even using the label is not important, but what are the things that get you into trouble? Like, what are the things you find difficult? And also focusing on what they're doing, okay, which, as I said, there are a lot of good features which people with ADHD often have, whether it's their creativity or their wackiness or, fearless thinking, innovative designs.
The dare spirit,
which has its own kind of special character. And then give them something to read, I would say. I was reading this, and I thought of you and your struggles. Do you think this this makes sense to you?
But not everyone will, of course.
Yeah, but if they know you care, they're more likely. If it's a way to label, they think that you're just trying to label them as,
Sai, you need to be very, very careful. You have to handle these people with actually kid gloves. Don't come to me and say, I think you need to check yourself, because I don't know how I would react. But yes, and there is one more question. Babu Rao Dhuri says, Babu Rao, I cannot understand your question clearly. It says, my 9-year-old he is in 4th standard, but he is not studying at school. So maybe you're trying to say that, you know, your son may have ADHD. But he's at home and not studying. So what?
I know it's a common problem. You know, Barbara, you're not alone. There are many parents who are facing this situation where children are at home these days. The routine has been, you know,
disrupted.
Tossed out of the window.
My goodness, yes.
So it's very hard to get back into that study mode and so on. But one is it just something like that? So definitely routine is important. So I would urge all parents to have a routine for the home, even for themselves. It just keeps us more kind of at peace, and we know what's going to happen. Second is to find out if from your child if he's finding anything difficult. Like, what are the subjects he's struggling with? Is it something he cannot understand? Because all children want to do well. Nobody does badly on purpose. So if the child is doing badly, there is something that needs to be attended. And then maybe getting help. Because maybe the teachers at school, or maybe there's a neighbor who understands that better. Because I think for parents, it's very hard to be the parent of the child and the full-time teacher of the child.
Yes.
You know,
it's exhausting.
It's exhausting. And then children also play up with their parents very often.
Sure.
Whereas a teacher can get the same work done in a jiffy, whereas the parent has been struggling. There's like a lot of emotional, you know, what do I say, issues over there.
And there are a lot of aspects to it. I mean, it is ADHD is not something that it's just this. There are so many different hues and colors and tones to it. So
yes, absolutely. Every child is different. Every adult is different.
True.
And it can make it quite difficult. And parents also need to take a break. That's one thing. If you are the parent of a child with ADHD, please look after yourself. You know, because it is stressful. So whatever it is that, you know, floats your boat, whether you need to do yoga, or you need to, you know, surf the internet, or you need to, listen to music and dance, talk to a friend, whatever it is, make sure in your day you have at least 15 minutes to half an hour minimum
to yourself
to recharge your batteries. Because if your batteries are discharged, you will not be able to look after anybody else.
Right.
So it's like the oxygen mask on the flight. First put on your oxygen mask
and
before
then
you help anybody else.
Yes.
So that's advice for daily life.
Doctor, we are out of time. I'd love to speak to you longer, but you know, I've learned so much. I think I've also learned that I may have ADHD, you know, and I'm so happy that my mom still, you know, kept me and didn't throw me out after everything that I've done as a child, because it's not difficult. Parents out there, teachers out there, you know, who are handling people with, especially children with ADHD, you're doing an excellent job, and we really look up to people who you know, go out of their way to help, like Dr. Nandita. Dr. Nandita, thank you again, and all the viewers, thanks so much. We look forward to your comments, and we are going to see you soon. Hope you learned as much as I did, and until next time, thank you.